Let's get started here. Great, thank you for your pings. Thank you for filling out the poll. Let me close that poll here for a second. And the good thing is that I can share results with you. So what you can see here is that most of you need help getting started. That's good news. This is the webinar where you want to be. I'm going to start from zero. But for those of you who also have the basics down, good news is I'm also going to share some good knowledge, nuggets of knowledge that you can take on to the next one. So you guys are in the right place. QuickStart webinar is where you want to be in terms of knowing how to get started with Sumo Logic, how to take it to the next level, and hopefully we'll get you to number 3, number 4, number 5, so that you can start learning this kind of stuff. So let me hide this results. And let's get started. I promise, as much as I can, that I will run this with no slides and more in the app itself. But let me start with a little bit of housekeeping. My name is Mario Sanchez, as you see here. If you need to reach me directly, mario@sumologic.com. Feel free to shoot any questions. You'll notice that you're on mute, and this is just to avoid distractions with everybody on the phone. So if you have any questions, I noticed that a few of you already found the questions tab on the right-hand side in the GoToWebinar. So feel free to send questions as you go. I'll try to answer them, but if not, we will definitely have a Q&A session at the end. And last but not least, yes, I will record the session. I will also share the slides. So in the next couple of days, expect to get an email from me with both the slides, which have some links to some good stuff, as well as a recording of this one, in case you want to review or share it with someone else. All right, let's see. There is a first question. Someone says, I can't see my screen. That's a good point because I wasn't sharing. So let me just share now. Thank you. Thanks for the reminder. This one always catches me. All right, here you go. You should be able to see my screen now. And let's get started. So the idea is that once we're done with this QuickStart webinar, there's 4 main things that I want you guys to hit. One is understand data collection. And notice I say understand rather than complete data collection. And the reason for that is that data collection is an administrative topic. This webinar is the first of 3. And actually, I should have shown that. Let me quickly open a tab in here. You guys right now registered for this one here, the Sumo Logic QuickStart webinar. For those of you who are administrators, you should definitely register for setting up Sumo Logic, which walks specifically into data collection and how to set up your deployment, what are your deployment options, some of the optimization tools available to you for search. And for those of you who, after this QuickStart webinar, want to dig a little bit deeper, you can join the Using Sumo Logic, which goes into advanced analytics and it's a lot of the how do I go and build some of this stuff that Mario talked about in the QuickStart webinar. All right, so with that in mind, let's go back here. Today, what I'm going to be showing you is I'm going to show you how to take your data, how to search it, how to parse it, how to find what data is available to me, and then start analyzing that data. But really, this point number 2, searching, parsing, and analyzing, is just a stepping stone. What you really want to get to is start visualizing your data, start monitoring your data. Make Sumo Logic work for you by creating dashboards, by creating alerts that are telling you what to do or how to keep an eye on your system. This analyzing, searching, and parsing is just the beginning to get to this. And last but not least, I want to show you that there's a lot of out-of-the-box library content that you don't have to start from scratch. Today, I'm going to show you how to start from scratch, but then I'm going to show you, by the way, there's a lot of stuff already built that we know, we've been around, right? We know what people look for in Apache data, or we know what people look for in the AWS sources. We can get you started with at least 80, 90, if not 95% of what you need, and then you can just tweak it to your particular business use case. All right, so 30,000-foot view, what is Sumo Logic? In short, we are machine data analytics, and most of our customers use us for one of these 3 scenarios, or possibly all 3. On the DevOps world, we help your developers streamline their continuous delivery. The idea is that they spend a lot more time developing code and less time troubleshooting, so we can help manage those logs to help you out. A lot of you are probably here because of your IT infrastructure. You want to monitor your stack, you want to keep an eye on your things, and really you want to start looking at all the metrics that matter for you. And from a compliance and security perspective, you want to keep an eye on your audits, you want to keep an eye on your compliance, and you can use Sumo Logic for that kind of stuff. All right, I'm going to skip all the marketing stuff and kind of dive into the topic. This here is a slide of all the different sources that we can collect data, whether it's metrics or whether it's logs. My point here is that we can grab structured or unstructured data. We just can load it in, and at some point we can structure it within Sumo Logic and start creating content out of that kind of stuff. Oops, sorry about that. I accidentally turned my monitor off. Okay, so you probably recognize quite a few of these logos here. On the left-hand side, you have your stack from your network to your virtual, all the way up to your actual custom application code. And on the right-hand side, you have your infrastructure. You can grab data from any of those and pull it up. And I'll show you, we have a lot of out-of-the-box content for a lot of these for a lot of these sources that you see here. So since there's quite a few newbies in the house, from a high-level overview, Sumo Logic data flow is broken into these three main areas. One is get the data into Sumo Logic. And we're not going to spend a lot of time in here. We're just going to review how to get that data. There's a whole new session specifically on data collection. But once that data is in Sumo Logic, how do you search it? How do you analyze it? And this is where we're going to be spending most of the time, learning about some of the operators and how do I do some like outlier detection. And eventually, how do we take it to the next level and get Sumo Logic to work for us? How do we alert? How do we create dashboards? How do we visualize that data so that we're not creating searches and filtering every time, but rather the system is doing it for us? Okay, so with that in mind, let me quickly start with number one, and then we're going to move into number two and number three. From a data collection perspective, again, I'm not going to show you how to collect data, but I just wanted you to understand a few concepts. We can collect data in two ways. One is you can install a collector on your host, and what this is it's a small agent that sits on your host, and you can point it to where your sources are, and then you can start sending that data over to Sumo Logic. The second option is using what we call a hosted collector. In that case, the collector sits in the Sumo Logic cloud, and then on your host, you have some script, some custom script, let's say a curl script, that is doing an HTTP post over to that collector that sits on the cloud. And that's how we can collect data from your host in these two systems. So think of host C here doing a cloud-to-cloud collection. Let's say I have my AWS data, I'm sending it over to my collector C, but maybe I have my Apache data where I have my collector sitting in my hosts, sending the data over to me. The reason I wanted to talk about these collectors is because there are metadata fields, meaning tags. These 5 tags that show up in here come with every single message that you send to Sumo Logic. So we tell it which collector the data is coming from, which source the data is coming from, the host itself, the source name, which is the name of the log file, including the path of where that data is coming from. And last but not least, this guy called the source category. Source category is really important because it could be anything that you want. However, you want to make it something meaningful. And you'll see in a little bit, in my examples, I've created some decent source categories. Notice here, I'm calling it I've added the source category down at the bottom. It says WS/Apache Axis. And the reason I chose a name like this that goes from general to specific is because then I could do searches like this. I can say, find anything that where source category equals WS/Apache Axis. In this case, in the first example, I can search across hosts. Notice I can search this Apache Axis and this Apache Axis. I didn't have to specify look in host A, look in host B. I could do searches like WS Apache star, in which case look for Apache Axis and error across any host. Or I can say look for WS star, in which case I don't care if it's IIS, I don't care if it's Apache, look for any web server log files and find me those results. So coming up with a good source category, and this is something that we discuss in that setting up Sumo Logic session, it becomes very, very important for you. Okay, by the way, just to go to the UI so that you guys understand which area I'm talking about, if you go to Manage and you go to Collection, or Setup Wizard, this is where you go and set up your collectors. So just for you guys to understand, here's my managed collection. If you notice, I have 4 pages of collectors that I've set up. Here's my Artifactory data. Here's my AWS data. Here's my AWS services. Let's take this one, for example. This one is a hosted collector. That's like the cloud to cloud. And in that collector, I'm collecting AWS CloudFront, CloudTrail, Config, ELB, Lambda S3, and you get the point. Here's all the different sources that I'm collecting, and here's that source category. You notice I called it labs in this case because this is my trading instance. So I'm calling it labs AWS CloudFront, labs AWS CloudTrail. So I could always say, give me anything that is labs AWS /star, and it would look across all my AWS data. Okay. All right. With that said, let's go back to this. What I want to do is I want to show you a quick demo. And the reason for this demo is I want to show you what the end product looks like. I'm going to show you today how to search. I'm going to show you how to parse. I'm going to show you how to filter the data. But all those are stepping stones to get to the end result, which is make Sumo Logic work for you. So this is what this demo does. I'm going to show you how I can set up an alert that notifies me of some critical event. Something's going on in my environment, and I get an alert about that. In this case, the alert is going to come through Slack, but it could be anything that you have a REST API to, like a PagerDuty, a Datadog, a Slack in this case. Essentially, it's just a webhook. But you could also have it just send you an email. Anyway, that alert is going to point us to some dashboard where in that particular dashboard, I'm going to find out, I'm going to start looking at some of the metrics and identifying what's going on in my environment. So you notice the metrics really focus on what is going on. Here's the interesting thing. I'm going to show you how to correlate those metrics to the relevant logs so that you can start identifying the why. Why is this happening? So we all know that we go to metrics, we see that something in our business is not going well, but we don't know then how to go and find out why it's going. So I'm going to show you how to correlate to the logs that show you exactly that. So with that said, let me jump into this demo over here. As a matter of fact, I kind of started this. Let's say that I'm going to open up my Slack. Hopefully I won't get too many crazy messages from coworkers right now. But here is an example of a message that you can get through Slack. In this case, I got a message. Oh, and by the way, sorry that I'm skipping a little bit. What I'm doing right now is there is this company, this fake company called Travelogic, and this could be you. This is a company that in the back end, they have microservices, they have containers, they have all these different services, and their IT ops or their DevOps team is in charge of keeping an eye on the health of this system. And you notice this Travelogic allows me to book flights, allows me to book hotels, allows me to book cars. So it's just a web presence, and we need to keep it up and running so that we make sure that people can go in here, book their stuff, pay, and give us money, right? So that's what I'm focusing on, this tool called Travelogic. Okay, so let's say that I have my Travelogic ops team. And this is an example of an alert that I could get. It's telling me, by the way, there seems to be, at this particular time, there seems to be some outlier. Here is a link to all the results of the query itself. So you can imagine that you probably have some query in the background that has a threshold that could say, alert me when there's an outlier above X number, or alert me when we have 2 consecutive of these, or whatever the case might be. I can go and look at the results, or probably more important in this case, it's actually pointing me to a dashboard link so that I can go and identify what is happening. So this dashboard link that you see here happens to be pointing me to this particular dashboard. So you notice alerts are automatically delivered to that Travel Ops channel on Slack. I could be alerted through that Slack, or anybody in my team, or if I have this up in my operations center, I would clearly see that a lot of stuff is looking red. So something is happening. If everything looked green, I'd be going off to a very nice day, but it looks like there's a lot of stuff in green. Let me talk a little bit about what you're seeing. This is an operational overview dashboard. And what I see here is the health of my system from a high level. You see, I can see some reporting nodes. This one in here is my ELBs. By the way, if you click on this little one here, it allows you to expand that one. But here's my ELB 500. So it looks like I have a lot of those. Something is going on with my ELB. I can see my ELB response times here that is showing me 4 seconds instead of my usual under a second. Again, you can expand this to see the contents of that. On the left right-hand side, I see my VPC network Down here, I see database issues. This could be my RDS, AWS RDS, or whatever database I'm using. So my point is, I have a panel here that is giving me a lot of information from a lot of different sources. It could be my logs, it could be my metrics, it could be some checkout. If I have microservices or services, in this case, you notice this checkout service in here. I have some other services that are showing in here, and I can keep an eye on them. So continuing with the story, I see my checkout service is having some problems, and this should be alarming to me. People are trying to check out, they're trying to pay, they're trying to give us money, and we cannot take their money. So I'm going to dive here a little deeper and find out what's going on by clicking on this particular panel. And what it just did is it's opening up another dashboard that is showing, it's going to show me a little more detail about what's going on. So notice this dashboard is called Travel Logic Service Detail. Remember, I had to do some setup for this, right? So of course, this is me getting Sumo Logic to work for me. But I'm going to show you after this demo how to do the setup. So what I see here in this service detail is my bookings. And if I expand this, this doesn't look all that great. You see this green area here is all the successes I had with my booking. So at some point, everything was good, but then around 6:50 a.m., by the way, I'm in Hawaii time. That's why you're seeing some odd times in here. But sometime around 7 a.m., I started having a huge spike on my fails. If you notice, this is the count of failed bookings that I've had. Fortunately, that's already over. Looks like I'm not having that issue anymore, but I don't want to let this go. I really want to find out what's going on in here. Why did I have all these failed bookings at some point in time? So you notice how I'm using metrics to identify the what is going on in my system. From a business perspective, I now know that I'm having some issues with my bookings. But what I really need to find out is why. Why was this happening? Just for completeness, I'm going to show you some of these other dashboards that are shown here. The gateway latency is showing me that there is a spike in my latency, and this envelope that you see here is my outliers. Of course, if I had a big spike, my outlier envelope gets a little bit bigger because it takes into account previous data points. But I can see that there was a spike. So this is probably the outlier that sent me that email saying, oh, there's a major increase in your gateway latency average. I can see the deltas. I can see some errors by node. So here it's showing me that I'm having some nodes with some error. And if I hover over it, you'll notice that this is the customer support team.travel.checkout. So I already, just from looking at this, I'm already getting a good idea that I'm having some issues with my checkout service. It looks like the other services, let's see these ones in here. This is my product services. This is some other checkout. So these other services are probably not having that many issues, but my checkout service is having some sort of an issue. If I go over to the right-hand side here, I could probably see it a little more clearly. Let me open this one and see the details. This one here is showing me that my service, like this, for example, is my travel product service. This one here is my travel settings service. This one here is my travel worker service. So all these services seem to be okay and just continue to flow. However, this one's up here, these two in particular, this travel checkout node number 2416 ... And this one here, which is also a travel checkout node, these two seem to have had a huge spike in CPU usage. This is, by the way, CPU usage and total memory. And around 6:50 a.m., they had a huge spike. So here's a really cool thing I can do. I was just looking and expanding in them, but what I can do is I can actually dive into this dashboard and start identifying a little more information, so that I can look at what's going on in there. So here is my dashboard. Here's the metric. Here's the queries underneath this particular panel that I was seeing. So total memory doesn't seem to be an issue. Let me do this. Let me turn off memory. You see, this is the metric memory usage. I'm going to turn that one off so that I can focus just on the CPU total. So here's CPU total. There's those nodes that are having some issue. What I'm going to do is I want to find out the logs. I want to know what was going on in my logs at this particular point in time, because clearly something went on and the logs are probably going to tell me that. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to dive into the relevant logs. And you notice as soon as I start looking at logs, let me click somewhere else for now. I can look at some metadata here. Remember that those 5 different fields: the collector, the source category. Here's where it shows up. I can say, okay, show me anything where source category equals, and I'm going to choose that CS travel checkout. And the reason for that is because I know that it's having some issues with travel checkout. So I can run this search as it is and say, okay, show me the logs that were happening for CS travel checkout. And you notice how around this time when the error occurred, the the square looks a little darker. That means that there is more activity. That means that my logs are a lot denser at that time. Logs weren't happening all that much, or I had logs before, but now at this particular point in time, I started generating a few more logs. Let me make this a little more interesting. I'm going to put the keyword error, because what I want to do is I want to find out logs that had the word error in it. And look at that. There were no errors before that, but now as this spike started, I start seeing a lot of errors in my log files. So this is a good indication. There's clearly correlation to my logs, the error in my logs, and the metrics that I see here. Now I have a couple of options from here. I can click on any of these little squares, and what it's going to do is it's going to show me the logs for that particular point in time. So here are the logs. Because I clicked in this square here, these are the logs that are happening at that particular point in time. So I can scroll through them. I can see, for example, that this one has an invalid access key error. This one down here, let's say this one has a SSL3 certificate issue, certificate verify failed. So I already have some idea that there is some certificate issue of sorts or some invalid access key happening. But I'm going to show you another option. I could skim through these and eyeball them and try to get to the issue, or I can actually do a shift click. And by doing a shift click, what's happening right now is it's taking me to the full power of searching. So now here in this search area, you notice I have a lot more tools to start looking. I have this histogram showing me for that particular point in time what kind of errors were happening, what was going on in here. I can see as well the messages in JSON format. I can view them as raw. So my point is, it took me to this page where now I can search, and I can search with a full strength of Sumo Logic. I'm going to do something. I'm going to broaden my search. Instead of just looking for the stuff with the word error in it, I'm going to look at all the messages that happen in that period of time. The reason for that is because, as a matter of fact, I'm going to expand this. Remember, the issue was from 6:50 earlier, so I'm going to even start a little earlier, so I make sure that I catch what was going on before that. So I'm going to go from, let's say, like 6:45 all the way through, perhaps let's go, oops, I meant to do it in the other one. Let's go in here and say, I want to start at 6:45. And I want to go all the way to, let's say, 7 o'clock. So you notice how you can play with this tool in here as well. So now I'm grabbing 15 minutes worth of data for that period of time that spans my errors. I'm grabbing everything without the word checkout so that I can see what happened out there. And I can start reviewing these pages. Look, I'm getting 18,000 results. That's a lot of results. As a matter of fact, that's 700 plus pages worth of results. Instead, I'm going to hit this log reduce button. I call it the easy button, because what I'm telling Sumo to do is, listen, I have so many messages, like 18,000 messages. I want you to go out there and compile all the messages that look the same. It creates what we call signatures. And it came back and said, okay, I looked at your 18,000 messages and I compressed them into signatures. As a matter of fact, 1,100 of those messages all looked very similar. They all had the same syntax. And about 2,000 all looked like this. So what it did is, it brought down those 700 pages down to 3 pages, which is a lot easier for me to skim through, because a lot of the messages were the same. Of course, the IP address might have been different. The date would have been different, but that's how it understands what things it can aggregate. And you can teach it. You can say, you can upvote, you can you can promote or demote some of these signatures. You can edit the signatures if you want as well. So going back to this, let's see what it found. It found these messages that had a bad handshake, again, some sort of certificate issue. But if you notice this one down here, the one that only happened a couple of times. Oh, this is interesting. This is saying that the app, it was starting the app, and this was for that service checkout. So again, this is my checkout service that was having the issue. It deployed a development version instead of deploying a production version. It deployed a development version into my production environment, and I bet you that development version, that dev version, has the wrong certificate, which is causing the whole bunch of 500s that I was seeing in my dashboards, which is causing people to not be able to check out. So you notice how I went from, if I go back to this slide, I went from looking at an alert that tells me about something, diving into the dashboard to look at the metrics that are going on, diving into the relevant logs, identifying what's going on, and being able to quickly troubleshoot this situation. Now I know that I have to go back, deploy the appropriate code in here so that I stop having these issues, and I'm done with what I'm seeing in here. All right, so why did I want to show you this demo? My point here to you, and I'll go back to that slide, my point is, make Sumo work for you. I'm going to show you today how to search, how to parse, but getting to the point where you develop these kinds of dashboards that give you information. Set up these alerts that tell you what is going on so that you don't have to be in Sumo searching every single day, but rather Sumo's working for you, and then you are alerted of the stuff that you care about. Okay, any questions from the audience so far? No questions? Okay, so with that in mind then, let me show you searching and analyzing. And what I'm going to do is I'll share these slides with you. This kind of the slides walk in details to how to search, how to parse. But instead, I'm just going to go into Sumo and start showing you how to do this kind of stuff. I'm going to be using a training environment. I'm logged in as myself. And for most of you, especially if you're completely new to Sumo Logic, actually, there is a question that's popping up. Let me bring this up and see. The question says, when you upvote or downvote an item, what action is taken? Excellent. So the question is, when you upvote or downvote an item, what action is taken? And I am assuming the question, is around this guy. Oh, actually, let me get to that page. Did I close that? I might have. No, let's see. There it is. So remember when I ran log reduce, I have the ability to upvote and downvote stuff. And the question is, what action is taken? Well, this log reduce that I ran, remember there was a log reduce button. What it does is it creates these signatures and it learns from you as it's creating the signatures. If you upvote a signature, it's going to be looking for that signature in your sources, and it's going to show it as a relevant signature at the top of your stuff. So for the demo purposes, you notice that I've upvoted these guys. Therefore, the relevance is set up a lot higher than the relevance of all these other ones. So what it does is it brings it to the top so that you can start finding the stuff that you care for. If you downvote something, of course, it's going to bring it down. You're welcome, Susan. Happy to help out with that. Okay, good questions. Let's go back to this guy here. Okay, so I was telling you I'm using a training instance. For most of you, you log on to Sumo Logic and your administrator gave you access, and they said, okay, all the data is in there, have at it, do anything and everything you want. But the first thing that you do is you come in here and you're not really sure what kind of data you have. So I'm going to show you a very tricky way, a very sneaky way of finding out what data is available to you. The answer is this one. You can tell it, okay, give me everything. Well, you could do it two ways. I'm going to show you the easy way, and then I'm going to show you the sneaky cool way. The first one is you can go under Manage. you can click on collection. And here in collection, even though you won't be able to edit and delete any of these collectors, and this is going to be grayed out for you, you can see everything that has been set up for you. So in this case, I could see that my artifactor has been set up, and this is how I would identify that data. I could see that all my AWS is set up, and this is how I would identify it, and you get the point. If you're looking for something in particular, you can search for it. Perhaps I want to look for Apache, and if I enter that, it brings back anything that has the word Apache in it. So notice I have my Tomcat data, my access, my error, my this came back because it's under this same dashboard. And so what you can do from here is you can just click on this little icon, and it's going to build a query for you. And notice it built a quick query saying, show me anything where source category equals lab Apache Axis. By the way, it puts these quotes, they're not necessary. You could also run the query like this and it will also work. So there is my first query ever. I just searched for source category equals lab Apache Axis, and it's bringing back a whole bunch of messages with that particular query. Another sneaky way, let me close this one here. Another sneaky way to find out what data is in there, and you'll probably want to jot this down or take a screenshot, is you can say, okay, give me everything that I have, but then I want to count it by source category. And what that is going to do is it's going to give you a count of everything that you have counted by source category, but you just want a little bit of time. You don't want the last 15 minutes because that's a lot of data. Let's just choose minus 5 minutes or minus 3 minutes worth. So you notice the syntax here. I was able to take the last 15 minutes syntax that I had, which is minus 15m, and just say 5m in this particular place. Click on start. And what it's doing right now, it's bringing back 3 pages worth of data, but now I can see, okay, I now know that I have Zscaler data, I have Snort data, my firewall data, I have my VPC, Lambda, PagerDuty, and this gives you a good idea of what kind of data you have. And let's say that what you were looking for is that Labs Apache data, and so now you're golden. You know you have that data, you can grab that source category and you can start building your own query now. You can say, I'm going to leave this up in case we want to come back to this, but I'm going to open a new tab. And so now you can say, okay, give me everything where source category equals Labs Apache Axis, and that's how you go about starting to search your query. So to find out what data is there for you, here's a nice little way to do it. Star pipe count by source category. Remember not to search for too much data because this is really just saying, give me a lot of data and count it. But this gives you the labels of the source categories that are available to you. All right, if I were you and I'm getting started and I know that I care for Labs Apache Axis, here is how I would go about. First is I don't want to reinvent the wheel. So what I would do is I'd go to the library, and I'm going to talk about the library a lot more later on. But in this library, I have a couple of things. I have my recent, meaning all the recent searches that I've searched in before. So here's a couple of searches that I've been searching in the past. It stores up to 3 different searches. It also stores pin searches. I don't have any right now, but a pin search is the following. If, let's say I'm going to run this search, and I'm going to run it for, let's say, 365 days. So minus 365 days, right? So that's a big search and it's going to take a while. What I can do is I can pin it. See this little icon in here? I can pin this search and give it a name and say my big search. And then I can, once I name it and I run it, what's going to happen is this search will get stored here in my library under pin searches. Where was it? There it is. And so now I don't have to wait for that search to complete. I can close my browser, I can go to lunch, I can go to bed, whatever the case might be. That search is going to store here along with its results for the next 3 days. So if you ever need to do a big search, pin searches is the answer for you. All right, favorites, you can imagine anything that you star. Personal is anything that you've created. Anything that is out there that you've created gets stored in the personal folder. Your dashboards, perhaps you have some queries you want to save. Org is anybody in my organization. So you notice there's a couple of other people in this organization, and I can see if they decided to share anything with me, it's stored in here. So what I would do is if I want to analyze my Apache data, I probably would start by looking for what has anybody else already built that is Apache data. So notice I searched Apache and I see quite a few overview dashboards. I see quite a bit of data in here. The reason you see repeats is because this is a training instance and we've installed some of these things numerous times. But my point to you is there's no reason to start from scratch. If I want to analyze that Apache data, it's possible that some of my coworkers have already built stuff out there that I can go use. All right, you tell me, well, Mario, that's good news, but actually we're brand new to Sumo Logic and I bet you nobody has built anything. Okay, so that's cool. Let's say that you did this search and you came back empty-handed. Absolutely no results out here. The next step for you is go to this apps folder. This apps folder shows you all the different apps that we have out there that we've actually built content for. So in the case of Apache, actually, we have built a lot of content. Here you go. Here's all the Apache content that we have built, and you don't have to start from scratch. We've already built this for you. All you have to tell us is, how do I load your Apache data into these dashboards? And that data is going to be available to you. And notice we have AWS sources, we have Artifactory, we have Box, Cisco. What I would encourage you is when you get a chance, go in here and look at all the different sources that are in here. Not only do we have stuff in this apps tile, we also have it in this preview tile. And the reason for that is because these ones we just finished or we're in the process of wrapping up. So we want to let you know that these are coming out, or they are out actually already, but we welcome feedback so that we can still bake stuff into that. So here's Azure Edit, CrowdStrike, Silence, for those of you who have a security use case, Evident.io, Silence, CrowdStrike. Anyway, a whole bunch of other ones. But let me show you how to take advantage of these out-of-the-box content. So let's go back to the one that we were talking about, Apache. I found that Sumo has Apache, which is great because that's exactly what I want to analyze. So now I can say, okay, click install. And it says, great, Mario, I'm going to install this Apache app for you. But one of the things you have to do is you have to tell me, how do I map this your source data, your Apache data, to these dashboards. So I could do it a couple of ways. The easy way is I could go find here my Apache data, and if I remember correctly, it was something like Labs Apache Axis or something like that. So it's probably somewhere in here. Sorry, I ran through it. Here it is, Labs Apache Axis. So there, I just told it, whenever you see source category equals Lab Apache Axis, that's my data. Go use it. Or if my data wasn't easily identifiable that way, I could always use a custom filter. I could say, oh, my data is the one that is coming from collector. Let's say that you created a collector called test A, right? So any data that is coming from collector test A, that's my Apache data, and that's the one that I want to use this with. But for now, the good news is that we do have an easy way to identify it, which is this way. And let me show you. I'm just going to install it. I'm going to call it Apache. Since we're in April, I'm going to call it Apache April. And I'm going to store it in my apps folder. It says, do you want it in your personal folder or somewhere else? So I'm going to store it in my apps folder. I'm going to click install. And what it's doing right now is it's making a copy of all that content into my apps folder. And it's prepending it with this source category equals Labs Apache Axis. Great thing, because I still don't know how Sumo Logic works. I still don't know about how to create queries, but look at this. I already start getting value out of it because here got installed in my personal folder under apps, under Apache April. Here's all these dashboards, all these queries. Let me show them to you. I'm going to open a couple of these. You'll notice that there's some new tabs opening up there at the top for me. While I click on these, I'm going to let those load in. In the meantime, let's just go grab one of these other queries that it built for me. How about top 404 refers, or let's say top browsers? Actually, let's see. Yeah, any of those top 404 refers. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this query that already built for me. It looks pretty scary. Don't worry, by the end of today, you will know what all this stuff means. But look, what it's doing is it's saying, search for anything that has a source category equals Labs Apache Axis. Search for anything that has the word 404 in it. grab all those messages and start parsing them, meaning extract some fields from that data, extract the IP address, extract the method, extract the status code, extract the size. So notice it's doing a couple of things. And then it's saying, by the way, now that you know status code, I only want those whose status code equals 404, and then I want you to count it by refer. If I look at that query, if I do this query, I see that now it's showing me by refer a count of my messages in here, right? So you notice how without even knowing how to run or how to build these searches, I'm taking advantage of this stuff. As a matter of fact, let me show you some of those dashboards that I was trying to load. We'll give this one just a second. Here is, let me start from the back here. Here's Apache visitor locations. So you notice it's giving me worldwide hits from my client locations, and this is only within the US. These guys seem to still be loading in here. Here is visits by country over time, so it's showing me a breakdown by country over time. This one's going to show up by state in just a second. Here is visitor traffic insight, the top documents that get requested. So this one gets a request of 21,000. Top referrers. This is showing me the top 10 search terms. This is showing me media types served. So quite a lot of information that is coming out of the box. I did not even have to build this stuff, and I'm getting a lot of access into this. Visitor platforms, browsers and operating systems, popular mobile devices. So quite a bit of information that is coming out already from this stuff in here. And I didn't even have to do this. Here is the even better part of this stuff. Let's say that I have this one here and I want to tweak it because I want to find out not the top 10 search terms, but the top 20 search terms. The cool thing is that I can click on this icon on any of these panels. I can click and go to the search behind it. So now what it did is it's opening that search. There it is. This is the search itself. That seems like a pretty scary search. I can take my time to learn it, but the good news is that if I want to edit the search, let's say I don't want the last 10, I want 20, I can now edit it, run this search, and now I have myself a brand new search that is showing me the top 20. I can decide to save this search as something else because I'm going to keep it and use it for some other tool, or I could even say, wait, I want to actually update the dashboard. I want to make that change back into the dashboard so that this dashboard now reflects, which one was it? This one now reflects the top 20 PC and Mac versions instead of the top 10. So you see how we're taking advantage of that out-of-the-box content without even knowing how to write queries, without even knowing how to go about and build this stuff. Okay, any questions so far? No? All right, so let me close some of these. What I've shown you right now is, guys, no need to start from scratch. Take advantage of what's out there. Having said that, I'm going to show you how to start from scratch. Let's say that we now know that we have Apache data, and here's how you go about searching it, right? As a matter of fact, let's say that we only care for data that has the word Mozilla in it. So one new thing you can do is say source category equals lab Apache Axis and the word Mozilla. So I'm going to just put that in here. And you notice how I put quotes, how I put the and sign. It's smart enough to understand that this is an operator. The and is explicit. So I could do this. This means absolutely the same. However, if I was doing an or, of course I would have to put the or. But if you do that, that means an and as well. And I put these guys in quote. I don't have to because there's no spaces in it. I could have just said this thing here, and it does exactly the same. All right, so let's say that we're running this query. Well, there's, for those of you who know Apache data, most of you probably do, you notice there's an IP address, there's a timestamp, there is a URL, there's a status code. Let's say that we wanted to parse these fields. We want to find out how many 404s I have. I'm a little worried that I see a 401, I see a 500, I see quite a bit of stuff in here. What's going on? Let me parse that status code so that I can figure out what's going on. I'm going to show you the easy way, then I'm going to show you a few other ways of parsing as well. So here is my data. What I can do is I'm going to highlight this message all the way up to here. Maybe I'll do it just up to here. I'm going to highlight that and say I want to parse that selected text. So it's going to take this example, and I'm going to say, all right, whenever you have messages, anything you find between the word get and the word HTTP, I want that to become my URL. Then you're going to find this pattern, and anything you find after that, that's going to be my status code. And I think you're getting the point now. I'm going to grab that next one, and that's going to be my size. And I'm going to grab this last one here. Actually, this seems to be the referrer, right? So let's grab this one in quotes. That's going to be my referrer. And I'm going to grab the last stuff in here. This all the way to the bottom. I'm going to make it simple for now. I'm just going to call it user agent. But you can imagine that I could parse that further if I wanted to. A user agent. All right. Click submit. Now it built that parse statement for me. I could have typed it, but it's easier to use that little UI. If I click on start, what's going to happen is, notice that my message is still here on my right-hand side. There's the message. But now, cool, I've parsed out all these fields. There's my URL, my status code, my size, my user agent, my referrer. Why do I want to parse? Because now I can start doing things like counting by URL, or counting by status code, or counting by referrer, or perhaps I want to do an average of size by URL, or that kind of stuff. So you notice how, count by status code, you notice how parsing those fields is key. It's very, very key, because I can now start really analyzing my data. So queries without parsing are only going to get you that far. It's only going to find those messages with Mozilla, and then you have to go manually do your analytics. Parse as much as you can. You want to parse, in this particular case, parsing by my fields as I need. So with that said, I showed you the easy way. Let me actually show you a couple of other ways that you can do that parsing. What I'm going to do is I'm going to point you to this documentation, since you'll probably be going in there quite a bit. But the one that I showed you is, if you have predictable patterns, you can actually parse them using what we call an anchor, which is what you saw. I use the word get as an anchor. I use that HTTP as an anchor, and I parse that stuff. But what if you have variable patterns? What if you have patterns that are not always going to be the same? Well, most of you have probably used regex already, so you can knock yourself silly using this regex stuff. Let's take an example. As a matter of fact, let's take this one. Most of you probably have used regex before, but just in case, this is saying find this pattern, which is a number between 1 and 3 digits, a period, a number between 1 and 3 digits, a period, and you probably recognize that this looks like a pattern for an IP address. Find that pattern and store it in a field called IP address. I'm going to do exactly that. I'm going to grab this off of our documentation, go in here, just paste it in my instance. Let's see, I'm just going to go here. As a matter of fact, I'm going to paste it right here. So you notice you can have multiple parse statements, right? I had my parse here, and I have a second parse. And let's get rid of this count statement. As a matter of fact, I'm just going to comment it out so that you can see that it's going to parse the original fields, but it's also going to parse a field called the IP address. And there you go. I've just parsed from this message all those fields that I asked for initially, as well as that IP address, and I'm set. So parsing is going to be your friend. It's going to be what's going to get you to the next level for being able to do it. So parsing variable patterns with regex. Let me backtrack here. Parsing predictable patterns with anchor. But if you're sending us JSON formatted logs, well, we clearly know how that works. You can parse them using this. If you're sending us key value pairs, in this case, name equals Mario, company equals Sumo Logic, and so on, we know what that looks like. If you're sending us CSV formatted logs, we know how to use that. If you're sending us delimited logs with something else, let's say a tab or a colon, you can use this split operator for that kind of stuff as well. My point is, there's quite a few ways for you to parse. Make sure that you start doing that so you can start taking care of your logs. Now, having said that, what we recommend for best practices is to take advantage of what we call the field extraction rule. And rather than go through the whole theory of what this is, let me show you what a field extraction rule is. And by the way, you need to be an administrator to do this. So if you're not one, you'll have to work with your administrator. But what a field extraction allows me to do, and I've created one here already to show you exactly how it is. Let me go here and click on edit. This field extraction rule says, all right, any data that you get that is set for source category equals lab Apache Axis in this particular case, I want you to run this parse expression on it. So the really great thing about this is that it happens at ingestion time. So your logs are coming in and they're getting parsed right away. What that means is because I have this field extraction rule in place, I don't need to do this parsing that I'm doing here anymore. See all this parsing that is here? I actually can get rid of this because that field extraction rule is in place. Let me just show you something. I'm going to run this without parsing, and I hadn't spoken about this area here. This is called my field browser. The really cool thing about this field browser is that it has all those parse fields for me. Look, there's user agent, there's status code, source IP, source host. Actually, these are metadata, right? But there is size, refer, method, because of that field extraction rule. So I could now do this kind of stuff, count by status code, without really worrying about parsing because that field extraction rule is in place. So building a field extraction rule is incredibly easy. You go in here, click on add, you specify the rule name, you specify the scope. In the parse expression, you can knock yourself silly here with the regex, or we provide you some templates out of the box. So if you had, let's say, Nginx logs, you can say use that template here, and that gives you a starting point so you can start parsing your Nginx logs to build that field extraction rule. All right, so I've shown you that that you can pull that data. I've shown you that you can start parsing that data using operators or field extraction rules. My point is, now that your data is in here, you can start doing your counts, you can start doing your searching. I'm going to speed it up. I know we're running a bit out of time, so I'm going to show you a few more operators that are going to make it a little easier. So I have my counts of 404s, and perhaps I want to start finding how to time slice this, how to show a trend over time. So I'm going to show you some operators that are going to help you do exactly that. I'm going to time slice. Say I have 15 minutes worth of data. I'm going to time slice that by 1 minute, meaning 15 buckets. And now I want to see that data both by status code, but I want to see it by time slice as well. And this is going to start showing me the data broken by status code and by time slice. That's a little hard to do. So I'm going to introduce yet another operator called transpose. And what this guy allows me to do, if I could spell it correctly, is specify, turn this list into a table so it's a lot easier to read. So I can do this, transpose, and this is now showing me a much easier way to look at my data. So now I can see for this particular time period, here's the status codes, the count of status codes. And going from this table to actually graphing it is as simple as just clicking on this icon. So now I can see over time a graphical representation of what's going on in here. Let's say that I didn't want the 200s because those are overpowering. And this 304s, these are taking a lot of my stuff. So there it is. Now I can see the ones that I care. If I really cared about removing those, I can do that exactly here. I can say and status code. Remember that status code is already a field. So what I can do is say, I can call them out here. Status code, sorry, equals, what was it, 304? Which one? Yeah, 304 is the one. And because I don't want those, I'm going to put a not in front of it. And so now I've actually built the query with that permanent. And there you go. Last thing I'm going to show you, I'm going to turn this into a bar chart. And every option here has the ability for you to play with settings. So I'm just going to change the axis on one of these. Actually, let me change some properties. I'm going to change this properties, and I can put this to be a stack chart or perhaps a percent chart. You notice how you can play with the different properties in here. Maybe what I want to do is I want to leave it normal, and I want to highlight the 404. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to turn this one into a line chart. And now I have an example of my 404s against all my other um, um, status codes, and it's kind of highlighting that for me. So the last thing I'm going to show you is I've shown you how to create these queries. Again, remember, these are stepping stones. The idea here is to get to the dashboards, to get to the alerts. And I encourage you to join the next series where we're going to talk about how to build a lot of these. But the last thing I'm going to show you is, okay, I've built my panel now. How do I add it to a dashboard? And it's as simple as clicking in here. Click on Add to Dashboard. You can now give it a name. Let's say highlighting Apache 404s. Oops, if I can spell again. And I can add it to an existing dashboard by choosing it here, or I can add it to a brand new dashboard by just entering a name. And as you'd expect, what that is going to do is it's going to build a new dashboard. With that, I can click on Add. It builds it for me, and it builds a brand new dashboard that only has one panel. And I can start adding more panels to this dashboard as I see fit. All right, so let me go back to these guys. I know we're coming in at the hour. Let me skip all the way down here to the bottom to kind of wrap this up. So I talked a little bit about dashboards. I talked about apps themselves. So remember, look for the apps. Make sure that that data that you're trying to, if that data that you're trying to analyze, we already have apps for, there's absolutely no need to start from scratch. So showed you how to that we can bring any type of metrics or logs into Sumo. We can query and analyze them, which I showed you a little bit today about how to query and analyze. But remember, that's just a stepping stone. At the end of the day, you want to visualize that data, create your charts, create your dashboards, create your alerts, make Sumo work for you so you don't have to start from scratch. Call to action for you guys today is ensure that you have this robust source category. Work with your administrators to make sure you come up with a good naming convention for that. If you haven't done so, work with administrators to set up your field extraction rules. That's going to make it 1,000 times easier for you so you're not parsing in every one of your queries. And last but not least, take advantage of those existing apps. They're going to make your life a lot easier so you don't have to start from scratch. All right, let me pause here for a second. I know that we had a few questions during the session, but any questions from what you saw? You're welcome. I'm getting a lot of thank yous through the chat itself. Okay, if there are no questions, I'm going to leave you with one final thought. From the UI, you notice that you can go in here and let me go back to the UI. Under Help, you have a few options. You can go to Documentation. You can go to Support to open a ticket. You can let us know if there's something that you want to see in the tool. You can open a feature request. You can go into our community to tell us, to post if you have a particular question. Perhaps you have a query that you want to share with others, or you have a query that you have a question about. You can post on community itself. So I invite you to try any of these, documentation, community, open a new support case. And for those of you who want to learn a little more about this, I think I showed you this page before, but we have a couple other ones coming up in the near future. One is how to set up Sumo Logic. So that one's coming up in a couple of weeks or in a week's time. And then how to use Sumo Logic, which is going to dive deeper into advanced analytics. We're going to talk about operators like outlier and operators like log compare and log reduce, so you can get the most out of this tool. There is a question here from Israel. Let's say, sorry for late, I have a quick question. How about parse with different width strings in a raw log? So the question is, how do I parse with different strings that have from your raw log? My suggestion there for you, Imran, would be that you actually want to parse using regex. So see this one here called variable patterns? You'll want to be using that. You want to use, because regex allows you to choose different lengths. It allows you to choose different patterns. If you are not super familiar with regex, I would invite you to try this one, regex101.com. Incredibly useful tool. I shouldn't be showing someone else's stuff, but this one's incredibly useful. You can drop your string here, you can put your regular expression, and here you get an explanation of what is happening in there. So you'll definitely want to use that, Israel. You're welcome, Azir. Thank you. There's another question. Schedule searches and alerts. Oh yeah. So you saw me do a schedule search through Slack, and Daniel is asking, how do I do that? Daniel, the way to do that is if you go to manage, and you have to be administrator for this, by the way, but if you go to manage and click on connections, you can build here the connections themselves. You can click on add. Let's say you're building a Slack one. All of these are Slack connections, or at least these bottom ones. You can start and just click on webhook, in which case you get a blank screen, you start from scratch, or we know what's the payload that Slack is looking for. If you click on Slack, we get you started with a payload. So you just specify your name, your description, the URL you should be hitting, and you specify your payload. And once that is set up, once you've set up this connection in here, like you see, let me just open some examples that I have here. Here's my Slack one here, right? So once you set that up and you have a search, let's go back to the search. I did not cover scheduled alerts just because we don't have much time to do it here. But the way that this works is when you have a query, actually, let me take a better one. I'm going to go open, if you guys don't mind, I'll take a second here to go find a better example. Let me go here, go to alerts. Let's say that I have this example in here. So in this case, I have a query that is, without going into much detail, I'm pulling just 200s and 404s, and then I'm comparing my 404s to those 200s. Oops, this needs to say labs in here. Okay, so I create my query, and I have my data. It's only showing me when I have a violation, meaning that's when I want to have an alert. I click save or save as, and one of the things that I can do is I can schedule this search, and by scheduling that search, I can specify how often I want it to run, what's the time search of data I want it to search for, and then in here, under alert type, I can specify a few things, and I'm going to go straight to the point to answer Daniel's question. One of the things that you can choose is webhook, meaning whenever there's an alert, actually, let me go back here. I will say only show me this if the following condition is met. If my result is, let's say, greater than 0. This is going to work because notice my query, I say only show me results where failure rate is greater than 0, meaning if I have a violation, show me results. So if I don't get results, this is not going to trigger. But if I get results, then this is going to trigger. I can send it to whichever webhook I have already built in that previous screen, and that's how I was able to send my alert to that payload. Great question, Daniel. I hope this answers your question. Great. Anybody else? No? Super. You're welcome, guys. I'm getting a lot of thank yous. You're very welcome. I'm hoping this was helpful and that you guys have thank you, Daniel. I'm getting an amazing webinar, so that's good. You guys are very welcome. Please try it out. If you have any questions, reach out to us. You feel free to reach out to me as well, Mario at Sumo Logic. Happy to help out. There's a lot of stuff in here, but I'm going to say the key here is make Sumo work for you. Get those dashboards, get those alerts working for you, so that you do not have to. So that you don't have to start searching from scratch and all that good stuff. All right? Have a great day, guys. Take care.